All right, it's 1:05, so I say we'll get started. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for what we hope is a fun and informative webinar. You've obviously spent a few minutes with us and see we're a little bit silly. We like to have a good time. We've been having fun preparing for this webinar, so we hope that you'll walk away with some fun, cool ideas today. For those who don't, well, let's see if I can even get the screen to move forward. There we go. So for those who don't know me, my name's Amy Braiterman. I am excited to be here. We tried to have obviously start off with some fun today. So what you'll hear from me today is a lot of things that are big ideas, but also trying to keep it actionable, because that's kind of my motto in life and something that we live by every day on the work that we do and the things that we help organizations with. So over here at Data Axle, I manage a team of digital strategists, and we're really focused on bridging the gap between direct mail and digital. You're going to hear a ton about that today. It's become so much more important over the last few years to really rethink some of our best practices in the nonprofit industry and really see what should we be doing today and how can we be thinking about tomorrow a little bit differently. So happy to be here. Before I introduce my co-presenter, just to tell you a little bit more about Data Axle. So we have been compiling data for more than 50 years, and we have all sorts of data at our disposal. Consumer data, business data, and obviously donor data from our two cooperative databases, both Apogee and DonorBase. And this is where nonprofits have come together and share their data so that we can create all kinds of wonderful models so that you can find your next best donor. What's been really cool over the past few years is we've been taking these tried and true best practices in the direct mail acquisition space and bringing them into the digital space. Usually within digital marketing, you use the traditional audiences that are available within the online platforms, whether it's in a display, a demand side platform, or whether it's in Facebook or on LinkedIn, or pick your digital platform. There's audiences that are readily available out there. What we've been focused on over the last few years is taking those same tried and true best practices that have worked great in direct mail acquisition with lapsed donors, as well as retaining your donors, and bringing that into the digital space. So we're going to talk a little bit today as we go through and share some information about how donor audiences perform in the digital space and how you can really help to kind of learn more about your donors and find your next best donors using that wealth of donor data that's out there. So excited to be here with you today and share some of the great learnings that we've had over the past few years. And welcome Alyssa to share a little bit about herself.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Alyssa Esker. I'm the Director of Marketing Strategy and Analytics at Bonterra. My motto is that every problem has a solution, which is probably why I'm in data and marketing, is I really like to think of myself as a professional problem solver. And what I'm really passionate about is making sure that things that are complex, especially when you think about data, I'm sure you think of like spreadsheets and numbers and charts, and it's very daunting. I want to make those things that are complex very actionable for everyone. It doesn't have to be scary. There are really easy ways that you can dip your toes in the water and get access to different things in data, and data is incredible. What you can do with it is incredible. So as the Director of Marketing Strategy and Analytics at Bonterra, my team is really in charge of taking the thousands, probably even millions of data points that we're getting from all of our different marketing programs and all of our other data technology solutions that we have, and really create insights around how we are marketing to our target audience and what's being efficient and effective, so that we can strategize and change up our marketing mix. So this is very relatable to what you're trying to do in the fundraising space of, trying to find the right donors and giving them the right mix of messages so that they donate to your nonprofit. A little bit about Bonterra. If you're not familiar with Bonterra, you might be familiar with some of our legacy companies that are becoming a part of Bonterra. So there's Cyber Grants, Every Action, Network for Good, and Social Solutions, and as well as like all the products beneath those are becoming a part of Bonterra. We service the corporate social good and philanthropy space, nonprofit fundraising, and then relationship management and case management. And at the end of the day, we are a social good platform that powers those who power social impact. We really believe in the cause, and we're really thrilled support people in the nonprofit space. We support over 20,000 customers, including 16,000 nonprofits and over 50% of Fortune 100 companies. So I'm really excited to be here today because I think there's a really beautiful marriage that we'll talk about of like data and technology and how you get the insights and then how you can use technology to activate against those insights, and really focus and hone in on audiences, which at the end of the day, we're just all talking to people. So with that, let's get into it.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. All right. So getting into it at the very beginning to set the stage for you, we're firm believers in all audiences aren't created equal. So whether you're looking to acquire new donors or to retain your existing donors or engage your existing donors, our donors are not the same. And one thing that we've been talking a little bit about is that our donors are also consumers. We kind of forget this sometimes. We tend to think about donors as just donors in our nonprofit sector, but they have experiences outside of donating. You know, they go to FedEx, they go to the grocery store, they buy groceries online now. So they have a lot of experiences beyond just donating and in the philanthropic sector. And one of the reasons that's really important for us to keep top of mind is that these experiences that they have in the commercial space really impact their habits, their behaviors, and their expectations. So when they're coming to donate and when they're coming to engage with you, or they're reading your emails or opening your direct mail pieces or engaging with your digital advertising, they have expectations because of what they're experiencing in the world. And we need to make sure that we're kind of meeting and living up to some of those expectations that they're having. I read an interesting stat the other day that 71% of consumers really expect personalization in marketing. And then when they don't get their personalization, they're frustrated. That 76% of people said they were frustrated when things aren't personalized for them. So like they're now used to it, they want it. There is also this part of folks who want to make sure their data is safe and that they know that everything is protected, because obviously there's lots of privacy concerns out there, but consumers are really looking for those personal experiences, and our donors are consumers. And so we have to really remember that when we're thinking about what is life going to be like. So Alyssa's going to take us through some smart segmentation thoughts and some interesting ROI stats from some clients and that she's worked with.
Yeah, so as Amy mentioned, at the end of the day, what data allows you to do is think about the audience that you're targeting outside of the fact that they're just a name, first name, last name, and an email that you're trying to get at. So we have this concept called smart segmentation, which is really how you use data to create different buckets of your audiences based off of unique variables around them. So like the unique ways that they give, the unique times that they give, the unique types of things that they like to give to. Everyone is different. And then they, outside of like their donor and their giving habits, they also have other habits. So what are those like unique attributes that can kind of segment into these different groups? And I always recommend at least having like 2 or 3 different segments if you're just like starting off into it, but you can get really engaged with your segments, and you can have a lot of different segments as you get smarter with this. But smart segmentation has a lot of benefits. Number one is it can increase your conversions, and conversions can mean a lot of different things. It can mean anything from somebody buying something, from somebody donating to you, from somebody opening your email, from somebody going to your website, somebody downloading some content. But a recent study showed that 49% of participants within that study have purchased something because it was super personalized to them. So kind of going off of what Amy was talking about, that personalization is key. I'm sure we've all been guilty of this. Amazon right now has my number. They know me. They are targeting me on Instagram. With all these little different outfits, like they know me. And the reason that they know me is because they have studied my habits. They have put me in this box of someone who likes these types of clothes, and they know that like I have a tendency to like get, the pinks and the reds, who doesn't? And so they've put those in front of me. And so yes, I have definitely purchase something on impulse because it's been super personalized to me. Like I didn't even know that I was in market for that right now. But again, so it can increase your conversion. So having personalization plus that segmentation can really increase that. From a fundraising perspective, it can also increase the amount raised per every email. Email is a big tool in the fundraising space. A lot of nonprofits use it as their primary communication tool to reaching out to current and prospective donors. And so it's a valuable tool that does allow you to do a lot of different segmentation. So some, which is a community-based, an interfaith community-based nonprofit, and they use our Every Action tool, and they have always been a big email user, and they've done a lot of emails to their donor database. And what they really wanted to do was segment that database a little bit further by looking at things like how people were giving and when they were giving, and segmenting them based off of that, so that they could see if they could get people to donate more frequently or in different amounts based off of using that data. And so they were actually able to increase the amount raised per every single email by 36% using that. So it's very powerful. If you had compared to like some of the other emails where they weren't doing that kind of segmentation, they raised 36% more. So again, that smart segmentation is really powerful. And then also smart segmentation allows you to really personalize your asks. So again, personalization, we've all seen it, done it. It looks very basic when it's just, hi, first name, I see that you do this blank. That's not what we mean when we talk about personalization. So Habitat for Humanity of Omaha, they use Every Action, and they use their optimized ask, which uses predictive analytics as well. So what the optimized ask feature allows you to do is take all of the data of like how people are giving and how much they're giving, and come up with a specific amount that they think that this person is willing to give. So instead of just like a blanket, choose $100, choose $250, $50, it was personalized to that specific person based off of their giving patterns. And when they did that, they saw a 242% increase in their total revenue. So that was a nice marriage of using the data that they already had in their database of their donors, and then also marrying it with technology to reach those people in a very personalized way. So it sounds very complex and like very artificial intelligence, which it is at the end of the day, but you can do those types of things with data. So, and then finally, which we'll talk about as well, is like outside of your existing donor database, you can find new donors that look like your best donors. So you want to use your data that tells you this is what my audience looks like to find those same people so that you can create repeatable donations and continue to increase the impact that you're making at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Alyssa knows I'm totally guilty of the impulse buys too. Making jewel tone is my guilty pleasure. We're going to talk more about the art and science of audience selection. There's a ton of information that you have on your donors that sometimes we don't really think that we have, because we've been joking a little bit as we've been planning for this webinar that, you know, our theme is personalization is more than your first name. That's obviously one way of personalizing it, but that we really want to go beyond that, and that we can go beyond that. But I'll give you, like we said, we want to make sure that everyone can walk away with something super actionable. And Alyssa had just shared that like email is a really critical part for organizations' fundraising plans. And here's a quick, easy segment that everybody could walk away with today and put into your year-end giving plan. So when you're thinking about the art and science of data selection, sometimes it's just starting small and thinking about past donors. So with Giving Tuesday coming up, we know that on average, digital donors make 1.2 gifts per year. So we're usually in the digital space, you know, annual givers. And with the rules of email and having to have really good sender practices to make sure that they're getting delivered and hitting inboxes and not spam, and you've got great email deliverability, you've got to have some email parameters. So there's a really great chance that some of those Giving Tuesday donors from last year have fallen out of your active and engaged email segment. So one audience that you could add and factor into this year's plan is last year's Giving Tuesday donors. and have them not just in your active donor segment, but their own specialized segment. And you can even go back a couple more years and pull them all in. And then you could create some special creative that really acknowledges their past support of Giving Tuesday, and thank them for their gift and ask them to give again and tell them a little bit more about what you've been doing. So you know that they liked giving on Giving Tuesday, you know, they liked the camaraderie of that campaign. So it really tells you that a little bit more about that donor in a way we might not have thought about them before. They might also be a little bit of a younger donor, as we tend to pull in with Giving Tuesday, a different breed of donors. So just something to think about, you know, that there are opportunities out there that you might think about audience selection just a different way using the data that you already have. And that kind of takes us to, what do we know about our donors? We know a lot. And one way that we've kind of talked about breaking this out into like 3 easy buckets for you to think about when it comes to your donors and it comes to your data. So our categories are, when we think about donors, is data that you have about your donors. So this is data that's already in your different CRM systems, whether it's your online platform or your CRM. It's things like their average gift, how they've transacted with you, what campaigns they've given to you, all kinds of where they live, that type of information. And then there's data you can collect. And this is also known now, the term zero-party data. So sending out surveys, asking people about information, you know, what's their favorite color? What do they like, cats or dogs? You know, do they live on a street early? I don't know, I'm just making things up now. But data you can send out and ask people about themselves that you could then use to inform future strategies or use as a way to personalize their communications moving forward. And then there's data that you can append, and this is information that maybe you're not comfortable asking or you can't get off of their transaction history. And that could be information like, have they voted in last elections? Maybe if you know someone is an active voter, you might want to message them a little bit differently, more with an activism type of messaging in their calls to action to donate. Or you could append how many different organizations they've given to in the last 12 months, or what their average gift is to other organizations. So there's lots of information that you could get about your donors that can then factor into, well, what am I going to do with that information now? And that's really where we're about to transition in some of this kind of bigger thought conversation, where I'm hoping that you kind of leave us today thinking, maybe it's time to start thinking about things a little bit differently. So
yeah, I'm sorry, just just to go back to that. So just a couple of like ways that you can implement that are easy. So around the data that you have about your donors, really take a look at what information you are collecting when they are donating to you. Is it just really like first name, last name, email, how much they're going to donate? Or is there an opportunity for you to add some additional key indicators so that next time when you go back to them, you can personalize the asks? So look at the forms that you have where you're asking people to donate to you. And if you don't have to have really complex forms, and if you don't have like a crazy CRM system, you can use something easy as like a Google form. They export into a spreadsheet for you. Don't do spreadsheets, though. Spreadsheets are bad, but if you have to, I always recommend the technology for sure. But you can do things like that. And then the data that you can collect, if you're doing things like webinars, or you even just have like email sequences or like newsletters, like those are really good opportunities to send emails with questions that allow you to continue to collect data about your donors. And then, yeah, data that you can append. Typically, that'll be some like research that you'll have to do like manually. So going to people's like social media profiles and finding information about them, about their company, that sort of thing, and then putting some information in there. Or you can use like tools and technology as well. So just a couple of things that you can do right now to kind of help you in those like 3 areas.
And they're cool 3 areas to think about, because, and again, it depends on where you are in your fundraising journey and where your organization is, but there's tons of information out there that you can figure out what makes sense for you within our 3 categories. The reason this is all important is because it's going to really help us to know where we're going and where we're headed and where we're helping to advise organizations in their fundraising journeys. So we're really looking at creating more of an audience focused strategy. We do, like we just talked about, we know a lot about our donors. We know their giving habits. We also know their media preferences. We know their demographic information. We can take our audience focused strategy and really use that to help design that creative experience. So we can push our messaging a little bit further today once we've identified who they are and what they like. And then lastly, it's really about the experience, both that online and offline experience, that it's time we could evolve a little bit to what we're doing with our donors. Like, for example, we know that oftentimes direct mail drives people to donate online, and organizations are probably seeing a larger shift of online revenue or direct mail revenue coming in online. So you could consider looking at a different package to direct mail recipients who've given online. So there's just opportunities out there to say, how could I cater my experience to somebody based off of what their expectations are, or based off of how they've given. The reverse could be for email. If somebody has given because they received that direct mail package, could the cadence they receive via email be different? So we've got the tools to do the things. It's just sitting down and deciding as an organization, where would you like to go? What's going to be the best for you, and what's going to meet the needs of your constituents. So we're all about leaving status quo land. I think COVID, or the pandemic, was a real driving force for changes in overall consumer behavior. We were talking about this the other day, like the grocery industry is such an interesting, it's a really quick little snapshot to be able to see how behavior changed really fast. Before the pandemic, 81% of people had never bought groceries online. And then during the pandemic, 79% of people bought groceries online. And now post-pandemic, 57% of people consider themselves online grocery shoppers. So, no one was doing it, everyone was doing it. And now we've got this like new normal of people doing things. And it's just a nice little petri dish to see of like, this is a neat little industry to study, because it really can reflect and give us some information on what our donors are doing. So donors have more choices out there on how to make their gifts, and they're making them. They're giving indirect mail, writing checks. Gotta love those folks who still have I have a checkbook. Couldn't tell you where it is though. But they are making gifts through paid search, through your website, through Facebook, through email, through all kinds of different channels. They're donating to you. Direct mail has always been a conversion channel, but now it's becoming an amazing promotional channel. People really actually like receiving direct mail and then responding online. My favorite study that I've been reading about is how much millennials enjoy direct mail, and they don't look at it as junk mail. So it's just so interesting to me to think about how the different generations think about different types of different marketing tactics, because we all view them very differently. When we're looking at top conversion sources, your website and paid search, that's where our direct mail recipients love to give to. So those are primarily our baby boomers that are out there. And this is probably one of my favorite things to think about, is that baby boomers are still young. We tend to think that they're old and they don't know how to use the internet, and they don't use their phones, and they don't have tablets, but everybody does. They are actually the fastest growing e-commerce demographic. Thank the pandemic also for helping them get up to date on their technology. And additionally, millennials are older. I, as a Gen Xer, the forgotten generation that no one cares about, even though we have a ton of marketing, disposable income and buying power, no one markets to us because we're tiny compared to the other two generations. But it was really shocking to me to realize that like millennials are older and having children, and are not the 20-year-olds that are 18-year-olds that I thought of. They've grown up too. So, and what's cool about the different generations is like boomers never had the internet and have adopted it now older in life. millennials have never experienced life without the internet. So they really value online experiences, where boomers want you to keep it simple, be a straight shooter, don't need all the flash. They actually like reading emails. They'll read all day long in your email. So it's really important to kind of understand how your audiences consume and respond to email. Us Gen Xers, we know life with and without the internet. We remember call waiting, we remember Oregon Trail. We remember dial-up. We're very nostalgic. We love those things. So it's really cool though to think about when you're thinking about marketing and you're thinking about personalization and your audience selection, knowing how these different generations and your different audiences consume media is so important. It's going to make your campaigns way more effective.
Yeah, and that goes into like paying attention to what is going on with generational giving and adapting to how generations are also adapting, because years ago you would never think about millennials because they were young and broke and didn't have families, but now they're still broke, but they are starting to have families. And we're seeing this generational shift have a really big impact on the state of giving overall. 2/3 used to give, and now it's only 50% of the population, or it's less than 50% of the population that is giving right now. But the boomers are still making up the majority of that. Just the way that they're giving is so different because they have had to adapt this technology. So leaving out different channels that you may have not traditionally assumed with boomers could be hurting your strategy and really decreasing your reach of how you're thinking about those audiences and segmenting to them. So it's really important to pay attention to these kinds of shifts. And the amount of channels are getting much more complex than they've ever been. But what's good about that is you have data that you can collect from all of those different channels. And the call to action here is to make sure that you're not just paying attention to one of them. You're paying attention to all of them, and you're taking it by an audience approach, not just a channel approach. And we're really looking at how those audiences are interacting with all those different channels.
So if you only want to remember two stats, these are the important ones, and they're focused on boomers. And the reason we're focused on boomers is because it's still our donor demographic. They are the wealthiest of the generations. They have 70% of the nation's disposable income. They are the most generous. They give to the most charities. They give at the largest amounts. And they're giving online and offline. They're our target demographic. They're 65 plus. They're who we want. They're also the fastest growing demographic on Facebook. So they're online savvy. They're checking it every morning. So they're online, they're offline, they're everywhere, and they're still our donor demographic. So it's important that we're thinking about them in a more omni-channel way, because they are online doing things. I was cracking up the other day because my dad was like, I saw an ad online about donating to my local library, and I clicked on it and I gave to the library. And I was like, that's cute, Dad. Thanks for letting me know. Like, he's 76. He was very proud of himself. So it's just, they're cute, they're sweet out there. The other stat I thought was really cool is that last holiday season, 86% of boomers did their holiday shopping at Amazon.com or on Amazon.com. So they're also really savvy and know about Amazon and think that it's the bee's knees. So boomers are out there, they're using the tools, they understand it. There's something there we really need to think about in our marketing and how we're connecting with them. The one thing I will say is that with Giving Tuesday and year end coming up, let's not sleep on our millennials. Like, while Alyssa was also saying, like, yeah, they're still not giving at the level of our boomers, but they really did help build Giving Tuesday. It's what the type of holiday and giving experience that boomers thrive, or that millennials thrive in. It's about social good, it's about impact, it's coming together, it's the experience of it all. Giving Tuesday last year brought in like $3 billion. And I don't think it would have done that in the last 10 years, grown so fast, if it wasn't for millennials. So that's the time, if you're looking to kind of expand and reach a little bit of a younger demographic and a new audience, think about, you can do some expansion there with that effort. And then just kind of think about how you're going to reconnect with them throughout the year if you are bringing in that younger demographic. I don't know if you had anything else to share, Alyssa, before we move forward. I didn't want to leave you
No,
out.
I think that was a good call out though on the millennial sides. It's the advocacy side, you know, how they may be giving less, but they tend to volunteer a bit more, especially for things that are very passionate to them and that they and that are very like advocacy driven and human rights right now. So again, like using the data around you, and like there's a lot of data that you can access from studies that kind of tell you how generations are using it.
So one thing to consider, we kind of talked a little bit about this earlier, but quality really matters. And one of the things we've been working on is reaching our audiences in multiple channels. So using donor data in our ad channel. So for the last few years, we've been seeing a lot of direct mail co-targeting and taking those direct mail audiences and serving digital ads to them so that we're making direct mail more effective. And what we're noticing is that those donor data audiences outperform traditional ad targeting. We've taken it a step further now and are, instead of just marketing to those direct mail prospects or donors, saying, well, let's create some digital models. So let's go ahead and take, again, that same tried and true best practice of using donor cooperative data and donor acquisition and put that out into the digital space. So, and what we're really seeing is that there is so much greater ad engagement when you start with a more philanthropic audience. So you start with a more philanthropic audience of folks who are more interested in giving, and it turns out they're more likely to click on your ad, donate to you, and there you go, get a better ROI and hopefully have, better quality donor and LTV moving forward.
Yeah, and for those of you who may be doing some social media marketing already and advertising in that way, you know how limiting the levers you have are at pulling on who you can target. You can go very wide. They do try to corral you into like different things of like geo and like titles and like where the people live and like their interests and like what Facebook things they will, Facebook groups they follow and stuff like that. But this is very important that like if you expand out to other like data sources and use even like your own donor database, that you don't have to rely just on those levers, and it allows you to find your donors so you can stay in front of them, but also people who look like your donors so that you can bring in new donors. And again, as Amy mentioned, it gives you a 3-to-1 increase. And if you're not on social media and you're still a little nervous about it, or if you still are kind of playing around with it, Network for Good has some great content pieces with some guides on how to get started if anybody needs some extra help there.
So one thing we wanted to get everybody thinking about, and these are some industry observations that we've been picking up, and then some thoughts for you to consider. And they're rhetorical questions because we're in a webinar, so you can't really, well, I guess you could put in the Q&A or the chat some questions for us back, so you're allowed to. But they're really meant to get you thinking and get you moving to thinking to the next level. So we've been teasing this out, but one of the things that we've really noticed is the shift in donor giving behavior, that direct mail recipients are giving online. So when sometimes folks are not seeing the responses that they used to see in direct mail, and then we're saying, oh, let's cut direct mail, it's not doing well. Well, when that happens, you end up seeing declines in online giving at the same point, because as we've been talking about, direct mail drives people to give online. All the different marketing channels are working together to give you what you're looking for, which is more donors and greater revenue. So question for you to consider, because as a nonprofit industry, we kind of like to label folks and put you in a little bit of a box. So are you considered an online donor if you received a direct mail piece and gave online? Are you the property of the online team or the direct mail team, or just the organization? And that's something for you to kind of marinate on, take back to your team, and really think about how you're classifying donors moving forward and what that means to you. A second observation that we've been noticing is that you really get to see a change in response rate when you start measuring the audience versus the channel. So within direct mail, it's really common to only look at people who wrote checks. You get a direct mail piece, you send in your check, goes through all the processing and caging, and there you go. Those are your results. But what about those donors who are giving online? I've always thought it was kind of bizarre how they don't count in your results, but they should. It's kind of actually very similar to an email. We've noticed it. You send an email, not everyone immediately clicks and donates on that email, donates to that particular email. They might click on it and then go give to the main website. So, or end up giving in paid search. So these promotional and conversion channels end up helping and drive revenue to other places. So back to, for your consideration, what are the budget implications with your spend and with your revenue if you're not recognizing the audiences and channels complete impact? So I know that's kind of a tough, like a lot of words there, but basically the question is, if you're not seeing the full impact that the audience is having, how are you really able to assess whether or not the channel or the audience is working? Because we're not seeing the full picture. And so our goal is to figure out and to help folks see the full picture of the marketing channels that you're using, as well as the audiences and what they're truly bringing into your organization.
Yeah, and as you go in and analyze this for yourself, I find it helpful just to create a small, simple little table of like, here are the channels that I have and here's the audiences, and just kind of check like, are we putting these people in a box where we're only recognizing them as this one channel? And then if so, where can we investigate how else they use other channels? So then we can really answer these questions. So definitely really good food for thought here, and a good exercise for you guys to take away.
So our good friend Socrates, also known as Socrates, once said, the secret to change is to focus all your energy, not on fighting the old, but building the new. And we thought we would leave you with that, because it's so easy to just keep doing the status quo, or to just say, no, I don't want to do that. It's so hard. But really putting the energy on seeing what you can do is well worth the effort. So one way to embrace change and to not fight the new is to use our favorite start, stop, and continue matrix. I love this exercise. We used to do it back in the day with like sticky notes and all that stuff. So you can do it any sort of way you want. But Alyssa and I picked our favorite start, stop, and continues, and we thought we would share them with you today. But it's just a fun way to get you thinking and thinking outside the box on what you want to start doing. So how do I want to start thinking about my program or my donors? What are the things I want to stop doing today, or stop doing in the next few months or over the next year? And what are the things I want to continue testing or continue to try and learn more about? So for me, I want to really start helping organizations separate out marketing channel and giving channel preference in your donor and renewal strategies. So to really understand that like marketing is one thing and donating, giving channels are another, and they're not the same thing. I want to stop defining donors by how they gave. I'm no longer a direct mail donor. I'm no longer a digital donor. I'm just an organizational donor. And that my giving channel doesn't define me. And then I want to continue segmenting audiences to learn more from the current segmentation strategy, whether it's direct mail or digital, and then how I can take this information and do more with it. So those are my start, stop, and continues.
Yeah, and I gave here a couple of examples of some of our own customers who have used similar matrices to this to decide how they were going to start, stop, and continue. So Habitat for Humanity Omaha, which I talked about earlier, the reason why they even did that exercise that drove that 242% increase was because they wanted to expand their email program, but they wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't take a ton of different resources, a ton of different research, and would still have an ROI or a return on investment. And so they wanted to save time, but expand the audiences. So they started expanding it by using the optimized ask, which allowed them to save and be more efficient and effective. So why hunger? Why hunger had kind of done what Amy is talking about. They've defined their donors by their legacy way that they gave and the legacy development tools that Why Hunger was using. And this wasn't working for them anymore. So they stopped doing that and putting them in these boxes or buckets and thinking about them more from the audience perspective than just the channel perspective. And then finally, LGBTQ Victory Fund wanted to continue to create their powerful experiences. So they're very experience-driven organization. And so they wanted to continue that, but find unique ways to do that. So they continued that by creating more elevated digital experiences and creating those digital experiences through some of the tools that we have available and really connecting with their donors online. So those are just some ways that you can think about that tangibly for yourself.
So what did we learn today? Hopefully some fun things. I hope you had some fun with us today. First, obviously, is to focus on the audience and to look at all types of transactions when analyzing performance to really give you a more complete view of both your costs and your revenue. The other, what else have we learned is that we really want to determine the value of channel data and performance KPIs. So really looking at online and offline data, but that will help you understand the value of the channel data. Breaking down silos, start internally. You will better be able to really understand your donor value and their communication preferences when you're able to connect with all the teams within your organization. And then lastly, just consider this. It's something we've kind of talked a little bit about, but really using the channel KPIs to help inform your spend, where you should be doing your marketing, and then allowing the audience reporting. So how the audience performed, how much they brought in as your ROI reporting. And so those are kind of our big, what did we walk away with today? We hope those are some of the learnings that you've gotten from us.
And sorry,
please.
I saw there was a question about ROI, and I know we answered it as return on investment, but if you're not currently looking at your return on investment, it's a pretty easy thing to get started, and you don't have to get super complex with it. But again, you just want to have a space where you set what are your KPIs or your key performance indicators for what you're trying to achieve. So yes, you want a certain number of donations made with a certain amount, but I would also recommend having some other KPIs that are audience related. So we want to reach this audience and grow it. We want to have more donors within this audience, and we want to do it at this cost. And then you can really measure your ROI against those and set those specific goals and targets. So that was just a call out that I wanted to make there. And then, the only other thing that I would add to what have we learned is start small, try a few things. You don't have to boil the ocean to get into data. You are already probably collecting a lot of data that you don't even realize that you have. And there are some ways that you can do it. So some smart segments that you can try. And then Amy talked about of just looking at the database of who's fallen off over the last couple of years. Why did they fall off? When did they fall off? How can we get them back? What channel were they using back then? Can we reach them on a new channel potentially? So doing that as a small initial smart segment can help you kind of do that as well. So hopefully you can take some of these into actionable pieces.
Awesome. Were there any other questions I'm just not sure to look where to look for those. So I don't know if you can see them easier. Why I'm having a Zoom fail today.
So I think we're all set.
Okay, great. Awesome.
And then the next one.
Cool. Well, don't be shy. Definitely reach out to us if you've got questions. We're happy to help dive into anything a little bit more if there was something that you wanted to know more about. We're also going to be at Bridge next week, so you can come say hi in person to either booth. You can come visit us at Data Axle and spin a wheel and get a Starbucks gift card, I think, if you land on something special. But oh, a pickleball set. I didn't see that. Look at that.
Yes, please come see us at Bridge. We are at booth 519. We've got these brand new, beautiful Bonterra booths. So please come check them out. And yes, pickleball is the rage now. I have not played it myself. I have seen people play it. I have friends who have played it, but these are some nice pickleball sets. We've done pickleball tournaments at a couple of the events this year as well. So they're very, very fun. But yeah, so I know there were a couple of questions. So I know we answered what KPI was and key performance indicator, but we can spend a little bit going a bit deeper into a key performance indicator and how to evaluate like a good key performance indicator versus like a bad one, or like one that you won't be able to get it. So from a key performance indicator, you always want to kind of follow the SMART rule and make sure that it's like super measurable and it's attainable, and that you can track it. Good KPIs would be things like, again, like I mentioned, you want to reach a new audience. So you would want to have like a growth target in that new audience. So let's say, you have 100 donors that fit this audience and you want to double it. So you want 200 donors. That would be a good KPI and a good target to set for. Amy, any other suggestions when it comes to KPIs and like how people can be thinking about them and setting them for themselves?
I think they really vary by your program, by your channel, what you're looking for. So like if you're I guess actually response rate is one everybody loves. So
yeah, response rate is
like,
a good one.
That's one across all channels. Everyone's always looking at response rate, whether it's in direct mail or email or within advertising, how many people I marketed to X number of people and I've got X number of donors. There's your response rate. Average gift, another great KPI to think about. So, but they really are things that matter most to you, and to have ones that you'll want to track long term, that you can say, okay, here's where we are today, and then where do I want to be 5 years from now? And then what are the small steps? Because you don't have to, like Alyssa was saying, go crazy and build the ocean overnight. What am I going to do for the next 3 months to get me where I want to be? And just, we were using the diet analogy, lose 2 pounds every week, and you'll eventually get to the 30 that you're trying to get to. It's the same sort of thing with making changes to your fundraising plans.
Yeah, response rates is a great one. I would definitely recommend that as well. So spend some time getting an idea of your benchmarks of where your response rates are right now on your email programs. And then you can also segment that out again by audiences. So if you have specific audiences, and then see who has the lowest response rates, and that they may have low response rates, but when they give, their giving is higher. So that may be an audience that, like, if you can get better response rates, maybe you just tailor your messaging better, that you can really improve some ways to get some more donations at a higher rate. So another question that we got is, can you explain more about the statement channel to inform spend, but audience to inform ROI?
Sure. That's a good one. Actually, I'm glad someone put that in there, because so a few years ago, hopefully folks remember because it's not that long ago, Facebook made a change, or Apple made a change to tracking. So like open rates are different. And now like in Facebook, you can't track conversions like you used to. So then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my gosh, my Facebook program is terrible. I'm not making any money anymore. I'm going to stop advertising in Facebook. And we were comparing our Facebook new results to our Facebook old results. And they obviously didn't look great, because you used to have 100 conversions because everything was tracked perfectly. Facebook made privacy changes, Apple made changes, and now you are tracking very few conversions. So the reason why we're saying look at channel to inform versus where to put your marketing dollars, and in this example is to say that pick a different KPI. So like conversions isn't a great KPI for you anymore in Facebook. Look at your click-through rate, because like there's always going to be a change. And that's just one example where ad provider, technology provider makes a change that impacts how your fundraising is going to be. So the channel has now changed, and we now have to think about things a little bit differently. So in Facebook, look at click-through rates and say, oh, look at my click-through rates. They're bananas. My audience is loving it. I've got a 3% click-through rate, which is really high. So maybe you're at a 1.5%, still really high, very good. That's telling you that your marketing dollars are working. So that's informing you that my audience is in Facebook. It likes it. They're liking my ads. They're sharing my ads. My CPM is nice and low, or my CPC is low. And that's click-through rate, or cost per 1,000 impressions. And my click-through rate is nice and high. So all reasons to keep advertising in Facebook. But unfortunately, I can't track my conversions. Well, one thing that you could do is say, if you onboarded a custom audience, maybe you took your lapsed donor audience and put it in Facebook, you could match it back and say, okay, here's my audience that I started with. Here's all my transactions. How did they do? And that's how you could really say, oh, look at that. I got a whole bunch of reactivated lapsed donors from that media spend. It was well worth it. And so that's what we're trying to, hopefully that explains it a little bit more, to say that the marketing was a great way to look at using the channel KPIs to say, oh, this is a good channel to be in. And then my audience performance and how the revenue came in from that group is a good way to say, like, oh, they're doing well. They benefited from those extra marketing techniques or tactics.
Yeah. And then I know we've just got a couple minutes, but this could be a great closing question. So we talked a lot about changing how we look at things and how we do things. It's hard to be the person who takes the first leap. How do I make the case to leadership and my peers to try something new?
That is a good one. I would look at, use your data. So think about, are you, or at least for me, the first place I would say is, are you growing or are you stagnant in your revenue and in your donors? Like, number one place is always start with your own data. Because like the one great thing is that data always tells you the truth, because it can't like tell you something else. It is facts. It's always like, here's what it is. So if you're not meeting your revenue goals and you want to meet your revenue goals, because who doesn't want to meet their goals? That's a really great way to make the case to try something new, because you know what's going to happen if you stay the same. So being proactive and saying, hey, how about we test this? Or how about we try this? Again, to Alyssa's point, start small, pick something to try and do something a little bit different is just a great way to get started. But, look at your data and see what your state of affairs is. You can also use industry benchmarks. If you're not kind of meeting where others are, that's another great place. But I always prefer to use my own organization benchmarks, because you know what you're doing. And if it's been status quo and stagnant and your revenue is that way and your donor growth is that way, it's probably an easy case to say we should try something a little different.
Yeah, and I would echo what Amy's saying is, use the data. So again, you probably have more data than you think you do, but I would start with using the data to identify like one simple problem. So use some data to summarize a problem. And so I think I talked a little bit about this as like an example, but a simple problem that you could have is that we had these donors that were giving to us at one point and they're no longer giving to us. How many donors is that? And how much potential revenue and donations was that from them? And like how much of that has fallen off? And then have we been able to grow with the new audiences to make that up or not? And even if we have, is that potential dollars that we are missing to do good in the world? So summarize that as your statement of, here's the problem of how much we are currently missing right now from this specific audience. So summarize this as a problem based off of data. And then I would have a solution statement with like a projected like return on investment if we try something new. So again, it's very simple to find people that have dropped off and that were giving at one point of time. And so your solution statement can be, if we try segmenting them into this one new thing and trying this new messaging and like this new, even like direct mail campaign or social media program to reach back out to them, we could potentially get this many dollars back. And we would also at the same time increase our awareness because people will see what we are doing. So we could also get new donors. So you can use the data to kind of project what those like results will also be. So that would be my suggestion, is like lead with a problem statement based off the data and a solution with like a suggested impact if we just try this. So
I love that. I love the problem statement. I'm going to borrow that.
go for it. Well, I think we are at time and we have answered all of the questions. So
Awesome.
thanks everybody for being here. Hope you guys took away a couple of insights and some actionable things. And again, we hope to see you guys at Bridge. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to any of the emails.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye, everyone.